Last time on our Ultimate Guides, we covered the vampire team inside of One Night Ultimate Vampire. This time, we are going to be covering the variable/independent roles that exist that neither benefit the vampires nor the village team. So, let's go ahead and get into these roles. If you don't remember when I did my One Night Ultimate Vampire tutorial, where I explained all of the roles and what exactly they do inside the confines of the Dusk and Night phase, the Copycat is the first role on the far left. He will go first out of everybody inside the Dusk phase, and all that the Copycat does is that he gets to take a peek at one of the cards that are in the middle. The important thing that differentiates him from the doppelganger in One Night Ultimate Werewolf is the fact that if the role that he becomes is called later, then he does that action. It's also possible, depending on other roles, that the role that was looked at could end up in play. So it's possible, for example, if the Copycat looked at the witch, that the Copycat could wake up at the same time as the actual witch, and they both be doing their actions at the same time. It's a little freaky. The one in the middle we have is the Apprentice Assassin. So the Apprentice Assassin will go after the assassin, and will wake up and see who the assassin is. If there is an assassin and Apprentice Assassin in play, then the Apprentice Assassin wins only if the assassin dies. And that is in addition to whichever team might win, whether it be the vampires or if it's the villagers. If there is no assassin when the Apprentice Assassin wakes up, then she has the opportunity to place the mark of the assassin. The assassin, simply his only objective when he wakes up is to just place the mark of the assassin on any player and make sure that whoever has the mark dies. So now that you've been fully reminded of what each of the roles do, let's go a little bit into their strategies a little bit, see what it is that we're trying to work out with them. I'm going to base the videos that don't concern the main minority teams and base it off of how likely they are to be bluffed as, and kind of give it a little bit of a grading system as far as like what I overall think about the character, to just put in perspective how useful or not useful it is. So just going all the way through with the Copycat, I want to say that the best strategy to have with a Copycat is know that it's not a simple role to follow at all. Because even though you're copying another role and you're waking up when that role does, the important thing to remember is just remembering what role you picked. Because if you ever use the Copycat inside of any of the other games, whether it be just regular One Night Ultimate Werewolf, Daybreak, or even any of the bonus roles, then things become a little bit more complicated with what you have to remember, what you did, and how it all interacts with one another. Because, for example, if the drunk took the role that you ended up looking at, or for example, the witch found the role and was able to do something to change your role, then you have to remember that if anybody else ends up with the Copycat, or if like the troublemaker swaps you out, that you have to remember what it is that you originally looked at, because the card that the Copycat was given to is still the role that you originally looked at. So if the gremlin switches with anybody else in particular, let's say that the gremlin switches the diseased and a Copycat, but the Copycat saw that the priest wasn't in play, well then don't think of it as the pickpocket in the diseased that got switched, think of it as the pickpocket in the priest got switched, because that's what the Copycat is assuming the form of. So as you can tell, it gets a little bit complicated. As far as a grade, I'm going to base it off of a higher letter being a likelihood of being bluffed as. And I'm going to say that The grade that the copycat gets simply is an A plus for bluff. It's a great role to bluff as, because you could just say that you saw something else, which is why, if for whatever reason any other character looks at the center and sees that card, they could be like, well, why did you lie? This role is clearly here. Then you can just turn around and say, oh no, I'm the copycat. I saw that role was there, but I don't take the card. And that would be a true thing that would happen. It could be a viable play. So, as far as information goes, as far as a letter grade goes for information for the whatever team that they're on, I'd have to give it a B minus. It's a good information role, but you become that role. So it's a little bit hard to judge. So if you become a vampire as a copycat, then it's a little bit difficult. Whereas if you become a villager, it may be good, may be bad. I don't know. It's a little bit slippery, because the copycat could very easily become on either side. If the Apprentice Assassin is in the same game with the Assassin, then you're going to try to do everything that you can to convince the village team that you were a part of the same team as them. Because even though the Assassin will know who you are and you will know who they are, if you could try to convince the villagers and the vampires to help you by convincing the villagers that the Assassin is a vampire, or taking a different route completely by incriminating the Assassin and convincing the vampires to help you, then all of that's good too. It's also especially important as the Apprentice Assassin to kind of determine for yourself whether or not you think that the Assassin put the mark on themselves and is trying to act like a tanner to get themselves killed. Because the one important thing that hasn't been mentioned by any of the guides or anything that I've mentioned before is that the Assassin does have the ability to play the mark of the Assassin on himself and try to go out like a tanner. This would satisfy his win condition, because his win condition is simply to just make sure that whoever has the mark of the Assassin dies. And pretty much, as I mentioned earlier, if the Apprentice Assassin is by themselves, they're gonna act like the Assassin. So it's a very interesting bow, because you gotta be able to pull some strings, but not make yourself look too suspicious to where people are starting to think, oh, you're a vampire. Or if the vampire's case, they're going to be like, oh, you could be our scapegoat. We're going to frame you, make you look like a vampire, and get you killed. Because if the Apprentice Assassin gets killed, then it really doesn't matter as much in comparison. Granted, it's also possible that the Apprentice Assassin could receive the mark of the Assassin. But at that point in time, you never really know. As far as a letter grade when it comes to information, I give it a solid B. Not a B plus, not a B minus, not anything lower, but definitely not anything higher. Simply because of the fact that you immediately know who the Assassin is, and that your whole objective revolves around the Assassin if they're in the game. When it comes to your ability to bluff as the Apprentice Assassin, that is a tough claim to make. I would say that claim would be either a C, if I'm being quite honest. Simply because of the fact that it could work. Because if you're two vampires looking at each other, you could claim that one was the assassin and one was the apprentice assassin. But ultimately, why would you do that? Because if the assassin and apprentice assassin out each other, then neither one of them is going to die in that case. Because your goal is to try to be as sneaky as possible and to get either the assassin killed or whoever the assassin's target killed. So I don't know why you would want to take that as a bluff, but it is an option if you're trying to get people to avoid killing you as a vampire. As far as the villagers are concerned, it could provide beneficial to find out who the assassin and apprentice assassins are in order to make sure that neither one of them get killed and that you don't listen to them. So that way your team can conceptualize that, hey, we're here to look for vampires. We know you're the assassin. We know you're the apprentice assassin. We don't have to worry about you. If that makes any sorts of sense. But otherwise, there's not a whole lot more strategy revolved around it. It's mostly straightforward in what it is that you're trying to do, and there's a variety of different methods that you could go about it. So this is the assassin. If you remember, as far as order goes, that the assassin is going to be second to last inside of the dusk phase. Assassin's going to wake up and is going to place the mark of the assassin in front of any player that they wish. This can include themselves. While their eyes are still open, the apprentice assassin will wake up after them and will see if that they can find the assassin. Key thing to remember with the assassin is that you can play to either side. It all really just depends on how you're feeling in that game. And just also baseline information to know that the apprentice assassin is going to be gunning after you the whole game. That everything that they're doing is going to be in an attempt to try to get you killed. Sometimes it can prove beneficial to out yourself as the assassin, so that way people don't kill you if the apprentice assassin is trying to make moves. But otherwise, the key thing to note is that when all the players are waking up and looking at marks, there's going to be a good chance that by the end of the night phase, that someone is going to out that they have the mark of the assassin in front of them, and that they are being targeted. Villagers and the vampires, of course, will come to the consensus that either there's an assassin in play, and the assassin didn't, or it could be done under the apprentice assassin and there was no assassin in play, which are both viable options. It's also possible, if you're going super crazy, that it could also be a doppelganger assassin play, but that's not super likely. Keeping it to the confines of One Night Ultimate Vampire, however, when a player most of the time outs that they're a target of the assassin, it can be your job as the assassin to either try to help that person that's being incriminated, or to incriminate that person by saying that they're either a villager that could be an easy vote for the vampires, or you could try to insinuate that they're a vampire that's trying to not get killed, in which case both sides work. So your strategy as an independent role is going to change on which side you think has the better lies, and two, which side that you think you can convince easier towards fitting your objective. Because it doesn't matter which side you help. You're going to win alongside whichever team wins. So it's up to you. Do you think that you want to help the majority of the village team to try to get what you can? Or do you think that you want to help the vampires by getting them an easy target to incriminate, but that easy target is also the assassin's target at the same time? That way both sides can win. It's very tricky. The key thing to remember when it comes to variable and independent roles is that you're not on anybody's side. You can pick favorites, you can choose, you can throw somebody under the bus. So, when it comes to these independent roles, the first time that they're fully realized and really expanded upon, aside from a Tanner, is that you have way more options in comparison to the vampire team and the village team. So, comment down below, is there any other strategies that I didn't think of that you guys like to do a whole lot with your groups? Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.